So thank you again, Ted. Um, Now is time for our Dharma discussion. So I would just like to suggest that perhaps when someone is ready to share, that they both kind of bow in, unmute yourself, and say, Jeff bowing in, or Yoda, or whatever your name may be. Um, and just because depending on people's screen arrangement, we may not be able to just see visually, so perhaps doing both would be good. And when you're done sharing, just bow out. I know sometimes, we are actually practicing and sharing mindfully, and we may take a long pause. So people may not be sure if you're done sharing or not. So if you actually bow out, that'll be the sign. And just as far as our sharing, I'd like to encourage people to kind of share from the heart, share their experience of Ted's Dharma talk, both content, and since we are, this year with the Connecticut DTO kind of practicing and working to become Dharma teachers, that any kind of compassionate thoughts on maybe what you particularly liked about Ted's talk, and maybe things that you know you may want to have heard a little more about. Would also be appreciated. Again, with practicing kind of mindful, compassionate speech. So with that, I will open the floor for a Dharma discussion. Jeff, bowing out.
Margaret bowing in. Ted, I thought that your talk was very informative and wonderful, but what I really liked was your ending where you made it personal and you sort of verified and confirmed everything that you had talked about in your own way. And that, I think, helps us all. Thank you. Margaret bowing out.
John Banyan. Thank you, Ted. I think it follows the 3 basic steps that we learn. We contemplate, and then we put it into practice to transform. So thanks for that. After the talk, we got really a chance to practice. What I'd like to add is mindfulness is not just within Buddhism practice. Other religion practice, they also have practiced mindfulness. Other tribals, we've seen they practice mindfulness. So what's the difference between those practices and Buddhist practices of mindfulness? Certainly, we can see thieves, they mindful of your action, they mindful try to steal your personal information, stuff like that. Very mindful. So what's really the difference? So in Buddhism, like Ted mentioned, we see ourselves are the aggregation of the 5 things: body, feeling, mental formation, consciousness. So when we practice and we're mindful of those, I tend to look things at a more scientific angle. Our mind has some power to process information. So in terms of computer, we call it MIPS. I don't know how many zillion MIPS our mind has, but because of that, we tend to focus and process something we're interested in. So it's like a bell curve where you focus on those things. And with mindfulness, we kind of flatten that curve out because there are many, many input. We try to kind of tend to be equally looking at them. And so when we be able to see, all the inputs that we used to ignore, what we're going to do with them. So I think the purpose of mindfulness is when we see those, the final step is it triggers the mental formations and finally could become an action. I think in one of our Dharma class, we learned about how our mind works. I think originally it was the Abhidharma, and then later on it was changed to understanding our mind from Thich Nhat Hanh's writing. So actually the purpose of mindfulness is from that. The old textbook says that we need to guard all the inputs from the five senses. So when we're mindful of those, because those coming in, it's going through the thought process. It triggers the mental formation, and from that, it could turn out to be wholesome or unwholesome thought or actions. So being mindful of those inputs, be mindful of whatever mental formation or conscious thought that triggers from that, we can prevent unwholesome mental formation or unwholesome actions to sprout. So that's kind of part of the four efforts, blocking anything unwholesome from happening or stopping anything unwholesome currently happening. So that is the purpose of mindfulness in Buddhism. Other than just kind of trying to relax, or I think right now in the clinical area, they practice that. The goal is to recognize your feeling, your thoughts that brought up from your past experience, and try to deal with them. So in Buddhism, that's the first level, to recognize those input, stop the unwholesome mental formation or thoughts from happening. And then with that, it would help your meditation process when we go deeper. Ted kind of mentioned, when you do mindfulness, who observes who. What I'm thinking is, our mind, there are many processes going on, just like our computers, CPUs running many threads, doing many things. In mindfulness, we have just one thread. I call it a supervisory thread, which is our mindful thread that looks at all other threads. What's happening? And when we do that, other threads start up quieting down, and we have only one thread of supervisories, and that one thread is doing the observing of the five aggregates: the body, the feeling, mental formation, consciousness, and that eventually would help in doing the concentration, to get the mind concentration to develop wisdom. I'm buying out.
Craig bowing in. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Ted. That was great. As others have said, I think Margaret said that the talk itself was a great preparation for the guided meditation. And I mean, I really enjoyed the talk. The guided meditation at the end was really powerful. I mean, it just, everything was right there and fresh, and it just kind of opened some new vistas. So that was, I think, a great addition. So thank you for that. And then also, as someone else said, your personal story about how the artwork, what your expectation of the artwork was, and then your realization of, or prompted by its failure to do what you wanted, looking more deeply into it was a really good story that I think brought a lot home. A couple of things that you mentioned brought up something in me. The body in the body and the mind in the mind, that always puzzled me, what the heck they were talking about. And I've actually looked into it. I mean, what other people say about, what does that phrasing actually mean? And there are multiple interpretations of it. So yes, I mean, I think you mentioned that other people have a body, and so the body in the body, and just kind of the interpenetration of things. But one that I hadn't thought of, but that somebody else pointed out to me, was that the story of the arrow, being shot with the arrow, is actually two arrows, the actual physical thing that happens, and then all of the stuff that you bring with it, and the fear, the expectation, and all of the extra, kind of mental formations that we have associated with it. And I think one of the admonitions inherent in kind of this, body in the body or mind in the mind, is to go past that. So the body in the body is, without all of the stuff that you bring to the idea of the body, it's just this alone and only this, which I think is, a thing that is so easy to forget. So it's a great reminder, which is similar to the other thing you said when you're talking about mind. You were, kind of as an overall for all the four foundations, but there is mind, there is body. To just recognize that, and it's the simple acknowledgement of that is really important. And I think it's really important because of what is left unsaid in that. So to acknowledge what this is really important, but that also means to kind of acknowledge what it's not. And again, it's all of the stuff that we bring with it. So anyway, great talk. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Craig bowing out.
Yeah, Ted bowing in. I might share one other thought. One could be excused for thinking that this is all just a bunch of observation. Mindfulness is just a bunch of observation, right? Noting what is not. But in Buddhism, I think that there's also the opportunity for transformation. So, is this basically, I'm kind of just raising the question of, is this all just passive, or is there some active intention that can kind of blend in with this? And I really think that there kind of is some active intention that can blend in. So for instance, like what John mentioned, there are all these things going on. If you think about like a computer, or from modern psychology, neurobiology, there's all these different components going on in the brain. One thing I've noticed myself is that mindfulness allows me, my mindfulness is sometimes, or awareness is sometimes, instead of like turning on a light that just illuminates the entire room, it's a little bit more like a flashlight. I see this, I see this, I see this, I see this. So there's the, I may be focusing my mindfulness on my feelings, but when I do that, I have less awareness of sounds around me, for instance. Or I might be pondering my thinking, and then certainly I'll be less aware of, my body, for instance. So there is like this searchlight phenomenon, which I think gets better, gets more expansive with time. But where I choose to put that flashlight can be guided somewhat. If I have a mixture of wholesome, and if I use a little bit of it, so it blends in, I can blend in a little prajna, a little wisdom. If I identify some wholesome components, 5 wholesome components and 3 negative components, I can use mindfulness to kind of guide my awareness and attention to some of the more wholesome things and to start to practice those. So I don't think this is just an exercise in passive observation. I think that the nice thing is that we can use that, we can kind of shift the mindfulness to something that we think will be helpful, which is really a wonderful thing. So I just wanted to add that. And thank you for sharing, everybody, because probably should have put that in the Dharma talk, but we'll see.
Bobby Bowington? Oh, go ahead, Bobby.
Either way,
Yeah, go ahead.
thank you. I just want to say thank you to Ted for all of your efforts in your talk. There was so much there. I maybe could have taken notes, but then you don't go out in the rainstorm and take notes on the rain, so I just let it come down instead. I could listen to it again, and I like so much of it. And I really appreciated and enjoyed the meditation at the end, so much so that I looked at the screen and I'm not sure that it was recorded. So, Craig, did we record that?
I believe we did.
Recording.
It is? Okay. Well, thank you, because I will go back and look at it. Something that caught me earlier in the practice when we were doing the Heart Sutra was, that line of no ill being, no non-being, no, there's just no duality at a certain sense. And when you were talking, you mentioned the development of equanimity, when we're able to be mindful and just accept whatever is arising, pleasant or unpleasant, wholesome or unwholesome, because that's a judgment too. I think, oh, if I'm angry or mad, that's unwholesome, but it's not really. It's just what is. It's just how this aggregate of experience and being is responding to some stimulus. And it's a interesting fascination to just accept and abide with that and see where that takes you. And over time, I think it cultivates tolerance and acceptance and compassion and joy. Sometimes I wonder when I watch, Dharma talks of people that have been practicing their whole life, like even the Dalai Lama, they laugh so much. And it's like, that's the joy of just accepting, oh yeah, that's that. Ha ha ha. It's a aspiration, somewhere to aim for, but it doesn't come without a lot of mud, so yeah. But I do want to express my gratitude and thank you. Bobby bowing out.
Michelle bowing in. So despite having the camera off, I was focused on your Dharma talk, and I want to say thank you for. There's always a certain clarity that you bring to your topics when you speak about them, and this was no different. And I was sitting here thinking, for a very brief moment, my head was stuck on potato chips because that's that's where I go. And the funny thing is making like a grocery list and not consciously not putting them on there and knowing that, but that makes me happy, right? Like you were saying, oh, I'll work on my artwork and that will solve this, discomfort that's existing over here. And it's funny because the more I thought about that a little bit, it's around that concept of distraction, or the absolute like opposite of the, mindfulness. We think we're making a mindful choice to, I will focus my attention mindfully on something I enjoy doing, and that will make everything else subside. But we're distracting from actually being mindful about what is, causing us that discomfort. And like Bobby just described, like being with it and just acknowledging that it's there, right? And I think you're partly because I think we're, I voraciously lived my life through your artwork, right? Like I watch when you post the pictures and the artwork, I go, wow, I wish I could do that. But then I go, no, because then it wouldn't be the same anyway. That's your artwork. I have my own, right? But it's interesting because I could very easily go for, it's nice to look at those. It's nice to delve in and try to think, what was Ted thinking when he was doing those? Or what does this make me feel like, or whatever. And all the stuff that's discomfort is over here. So I can also distract myself with your artwork, and I can distract myself with potato chips or something that I find more pleasurable than dealing with an issue at hand, right? And it's not a procrastination thing. It's a, gee, I'll do this and it'll balance. It'll feel better. But it doesn't really, because I do is I turn around and the thing is still there, big and looming and, whatever. So I just, first time I thought in my head, I made that flip of it's really a distraction. It's that distraction technique. So I appreciate you giving those descriptions. And also, I did not, although I was present for the talk, I had to get distracted by the work computer for a minute. So I did not participate in the guided meditation piece. But I do want to say, I turned my head over and I could just see all of this calmness in all these little blocks. So I too am going to go back and listen to the recording and sit and actually, partake and enjoy that, not as a distraction, but as a mindful exercise. So thank you. Michelle, bowing out.
Jeff bowing in. So, Ted, thank you very much. I also like to express my appreciation. You can tell the work you put in to kind of develop the content, the flow, and it's I really like when a Dharma talk is rooted in a sutra, because it's maybe one I've read, maybe it's one I haven't read. And I think I read this one, but quite some time ago. So, to me, it's very nice to have that link with kind of our present day practice and the very deep roots of the Buddhist tradition. So I really did like that. So I wanted to mention that. A couple other things that kind of struck me. The insight you had, kind of linking the aggregates to the foundations of mindfulness, I think was really, really great, and is kind of is emblematic of our process of transforming suffering into acceptance and joy. The aggregates are often presenting these 5 heaps of stuff, literally, and they're being kind of a potentially problem, but that through meditation, mindfulness, insight, that they become the foundations of mindfulness. I appreciated that. And And I think because, as you pointed out, with the reference to mindfulness, which made me chuckle, is mindfulness has been, as a concept or an activity, has been commercialized, maybe cheapened in certain contexts, misappropriated, compared to the intention of it within Buddhist practice. And so I think that was a good, compare and contrast to also start in the beginning with. And the observation, when you're talking about the different aspects of mindfulness, how kind of the focus would bring an observation, whether it's, impermanence or interbeing or non-self, and particularly like interbeing and kind of the commonality with others, that's the mindfulness leading to insight and then naturally leading to compassion. So I think one of the good things for me that a Dharma teacher does, which you did in this in this instance, was to not just kind of talk about the topic, but then what happens, what was your experience on the path, and that's a wonderful thing for someone listening, because then they could go, so that's where that path leads. I could walk that path too. So it helps us with kind of our own positive motivation to go in a wholesome direction. So I think it's very nice and very important. And the guided practice at the end was just wonderful, a wonderful way to wrap it up. And also your personal experience, my last kind of the personal experience with the painting. I really, really enjoy that. I always like to hear your personal experience, because I know your science background and a scientist and a analytical thinker, and I am as well. And so I really relate to your experiences. So my one suggestion for improvement for future Dharma talks is put in more of that. Have two or three, kind of more focused your own experience, because again, I think that's kind of showing the application, how you apply the teachings, how you walk the path, and kind of what naturally happened for you and may naturally happen for other people if they try to similarly apply the teachings. But yeah, I really enjoyed your talk, and thank you again. Jeff bowing out.
Fapland bowing in. Just a brief comment. I too really enjoyed the talk, and it really it gave me a different perspective in some ways, to take a look at things that I've read a lot of times before. But so I appreciate that. I've been walking the path of potato chips lately, and I'm so glad you brought all that up, so that I can just address it instead of what I've been doing. And it hasn't made me happy at all. That's the funny thing about it. Not only is it not making me happy, I'm getting fat. So that doesn't make me happy either. So thanks for that. The other thing is that people who are making comments, today the comments have really helped me a lot. Craig, when you were saying, you always, that in the body and stuff, body in the body and so forth and so on, that's always been kind of puzzling to me. I've thought about it and wondered, and what you were saying about it, and then what John said about observing our own, being the observer of our own mind, that gave me a little bit of insight into all of that. And I'm so glad I tuned in today, because I almost didn't, because I thought, it's Saturday morning, I don't have to be there, but I'm really glad I came. Thanks.
This is Deborah bowing in, and I don't really have anything to add, because all of the comments by Faplan and Jeff and have been so insightful. I just want to say, one, I'm sorry about your dad, and two, that you were able to give the perspective of experiencing what you were talking about. And that was so wonderful. And like everybody else, I enjoyed the meditation at the end. It was a chance to put into practice what you were talking about, and it was very, very skillful. So thank you very much. This is Deborah bowing out.
Janet bowing in. Thank you so much, Ted. I really appreciate, and I find this talk to help me grow in a more skillful way in being mindful of myself. And I want to relate something that happened to me this week. You know, I've been isolating like a lot of people during the pandemic, and I'm taking this Tai Chi class at the Y. And there was a man who was interested in me. It was like a jewel in my day, in my life. It was just like the awareness of happiness, and was just bright in me. And then the more we talked, and I'm not inoculated for the coronavirus. So when that fact came into conversation, he was not interested in me anymore. It was like, you know, we can't even go for a walk together. And he just didn't want to have anything to do with someone who didn't have the shots. So there goes my bright jewel covered with mud. And the thing is, I can become attached to my feelings. And the thing is that I am aware that I was attached to this disappointment. And so that is a good thing for me, that listening to you today, I realized that this unpleasant thing happened, impermanence happens, and it would have been nice, but this is it. And just to feel that I am aware of all this is, I'd like to move on and find those joyful pieces you talked about, and gravitate more to those, and forget or push aside the unwholesome thoughts. And so this is all very helpful to me at this moment in my time for me. But I never think that recognizing what's happening and accepting it is a instant cure. I think it can help, because I know that has happened to me. We're like, oh yeah, I'm attached to this or whatever, and it can help. But in certain circumstances, like I said before, I can become attached to something which is unwholesome in my thinking. So this talk of yours today was very good for me. And thank you all for being here today. I'm enjoying seeing you all and your inputs. Thank you.
Respected Thai, dear Sangha, thank you for having me today. Thank you, Ted. I have such tremendous gratitude for all that you offered. And I'd love to see your artwork sometime. I don't know your last name, but I guess you're on Facebook and you post. Perhaps I could see that. That would be beautiful. Art is wonderful. And you're a scientist. Wow. You're well-rounded, my gosh. I had such gratitude because when you were speaking like the body, lately I've been reflecting on when I open the door, these hands from my ancestors opened the door. If I wouldn't have these hands, this body, if it wasn't for my ancestors, for my parents. And so your mentioning of the body just brings a tremendous gratitude. It just offers so much for me to contemplate and reflect. Even I was thinking about the skin. My gosh, you were talking about mucus and all the odors our skin holds in. Could you imagine if we didn't have our skin? Oh my gosh. So I was just really reflective and I have tremendous gratitude for that. Today for the first time, because it was the Dharma talk on mindfulness, I became hypnotized almost, or mesmerized by the word mind. And then when you were doing the guided meditation, I was thinking, oh my gosh, there's a whole subconscious duality going on every time we say mind, because the word my is in mind, and it just kept popping out at me like my mind, and that creates separateness. It creates duality. It's a subconscious thing that I have to be aware of, that this mind, I am not this mind is not me. So I thank you for opening these doors throughout the Dharma talk. And please excuse me, but this is the first original TED Talk I've ever experienced. So thank you, dear Ted. Have a beautiful day.
So thank you, everyone. We just have a few minutes left, so I don't know if there's anyone who hasn't shared who would like to share. Give a couple minutes for that, and then if anyone else has some kind of final thought they would very much like to share. Jeff bowing out. So Jeff bowing in. So very wonderful sharing this morning, and so I think perhaps we can begin to wrap up. I would just like to thank, I've mentioned Connecticut DTO, but obviously we have wonderful members from national DTO all across the country here. So thank you very much for joining and making this a much more rich experience. Thank you. So I'm going to sound the bell 3 times to conclude this part of the practice, and then perhaps we can have sharing of the merit.
May the merit of this practice benefit all beings and bring peace.
Thank you, Conrad. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Craig. Thanks everyone for joining. So I think our next practice is at the end of this month. So Craig, maybe you could remind us of the exact date and speaker.
February 26th. And so Richard Downey will be talking about right livelihood. So we have a couple other upcoming stuff. Because of the Thich Nhat Hanh Memorial, this practice is actually our January practice. So we'll have 2 in February. Then also next week, we have the National Sangha will be gathering on the 12th. And that's going to be Richard Zippoli concluding his talk on trauma-informed mindfulness. And the other reminder I wanted to say, and when I send out the video, I'll include these, and if anybody else has anything that I should include, let me know. But the other one I wanted to include was the silent retreat is coming up soon. Fernando just sent out an email to some of us reminding us that they need to know if anybody else wants to go, and you can contact Teo, Maeve, or Fernando if you are interested in, but that'll be Friday evening, so dinner Friday night on March 4th. Going through Sunday afternoon, the 6th. And I think that's all I have for announcements. Oh, but going back to sharing before, I didn't say this, Jeff, you are a wonderful bell master, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
The care you put into it, your comment about the how to receive the talk and everything else, you are great at this, so thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff, for doing the bell. It just made a great kind of container for the talk. Which, it put me at ease just knowing you were doing the bell. So.
Thank you. I'm glad to help you. So speaking of which, now we have had conclusion and announcements. So I'll ring the bell 3 last times to conclude our practice. Thank you. So thank you again, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Ted, for a wonderful talk and practice.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.
Have a
May you be
wonderful
well.
weekend.
Yeah, thanks. You too. So nice to see everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Yep. See you around. See you in person someday.
Yeah, someday.
Yeah.